Okay, Ellie, it looks like everybody's in. The room is yours.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that was quick. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our forum for the candidates for District 3 County Council. Election day is July 19th, and before that we have early voting and vote by mail. So it's coming up faster than you may think. There are many races, and we appreciate you tuning in to hear about this one. We are the District 17 Democratic Club. My name's Ellie Schwab-Belbladia. I'm chair of the club. Thanks to our board members, you can raise your hands. Dolly, Anna, Debbie, Aileen, Al, Richard, Carl, Scott, and Steve. This year we have an expanded county council, so the lines of District 3 have changed. The bulk of it, I'm told, is basically the cities of Rockville and Gaithersburg and Washington Grove. Our District 17 reach, the club's reach, is Rockville and Gaithersburg, but we have made efforts to be sure people in Washington Grove knew about this program. Questions were submitted in advance. We will try to fit in as many as possible, but we may not have time for them all, especially if they came in late today. There is a chat. There's always a chat. We do not plan to take questions from the chat, but feel free to make comments. We do ask that you be polite and respectful with your comments. Now I'm going to recognize elected officials and candidates who are here. I can't tell if you're here, to be honest, or so they would join us. And if I missed anyone, please announce yourself in the chat. Cheryl Kagan, I saw her today. She said she would be on. She's our District 17 state senator. Joe DiMaria is a candidate for District 17 delegate. Lorianne Sales is a candidate for County Council at Large. Kathleen Dumais is one of our sitting judges on the Circuit Court. She's on the ballot. Marilyn Pierre is a candidate for Circuit Court Judge. Max Wee, candidate for sheriff, has signed up. Don't know if he's on the call. Karen Bushell is clerk of the Circuit Court running for election. And then we have several people who are from the running for Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee, which is at the bottom of your ballot, but be sure to pay attention. Two people who are instrumental to our program this evening are running in the at-large race. That would be Michael Tardif, who is your Zoom manager, and Andrew Soundy will be asking the questions. They're both running for the at-large positions. And then for District 17, we get to elect one female and one male. Gloria Aparicio said she would be here. And two people who are running for the male position would be Matt Amon and Jason Spiegel. We also have Neil Harris from Gaithersburg City Council had signed up, and I hope he's here. So next, what are our ground rules for this program? Actually very simple and streamlined. For each portion of the show, the candidates will have 2-minute segments. Steve Fisher is our timekeeper. Steve will call 30 seconds when there's 30 seconds left, and then time when the 2 minutes are up. We're going to start in alphabetical order. Each candidate will respond, and then we'll rotate forward with each new question. Candidates will have 2 minutes to make their opening statements. Then Andrew will take over with the questions. Again, 2 minutes each. And I expect our last question will be around 8:15. When we're close to running out of time, we'll finish up with our closing statements of 2 minutes each. So let's get started with our candidates' opening statements. We'll start with Tikia Bennett, and then Sydney Kath, and then Rob Wu. Tikia, you're on.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. My name is Tikia Bennett. I was born here in Montgomery County. I am raising my children here in Montgomery County. I started my business here in Montgomery County, and I have never had any politician knock on my door here in Montgomery County. I never knew that politics was something that anybody could be involved in. I've always thought politics was something that was not meant for me or for me to even attempt to be in. I've dedicated my life to helping the people in my community, never making the connection that the help that my community need came with the politics of the county. I have never looked at myself as a politician. I look at myself as a community leader. I look at myself as a mom. I look at myself as someone who tries to change things for the less fortunate in the community. I've lived in every low-income community around Montgomery County, went to every single high school, went to every middle school because my family moved around a lot. There's a lot of people struggling in the community, and I want to make sure that they know that they do have a voice and it does matter. Money is not what politics are about. When you have a seat in the county council, that seat in the county council is for what you can do for the community, not what the community can do for you. And I just want to highlight that in my campaign.
30 seconds.
Running for county council is something that this is my second go around, and I plan on reaching more people in the community by knocking on the door and making sure that their voices are heard.
Thank you, Takia. That was lovely. And we will turn now to Sid Katz.
Unmute, please, Sid.
There we go. Well, thank you very, very much to Ellie and to everyone who helped put on this forum this evening, and for everyone who's attending. And I sincerely believe I'm speaking for Takia and Rob on that issue. I'm Sidney Katz. I'm a lifelong resident of Montgomery County. I was born in Gaithersburg. I attended Montgomery County Public Schools. My grandparents started a business in Gaithersburg in 1918, and I ultimately ran that store up until the time that I, just before I became a county council member. At the same time, for 20 years, I was on the Gaithersburg City Council. For 16 years, I became the mayor of Gaithersburg when my good friend Ed Boer died in office. And then I decided to run for the Montgomery County Council when Phil Andrews, who had the seat before me, decided not to run for re-election. He ran for county executive at that time, and that's when I decided to run for the county council. I'm someone who's experienced. I'm someone who's a consensus builder. I'm a problem solver. And for my experience, I was the Montgomery County chapter of the Maryland Municipal League.
30 seconds.
President for several years. I was the state president of the Maryland Municipal League. I was the vice president of the Montgomery County Council, and I've been president of the Montgomery County Council. I look forward to the other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Boy, that 2 minutes goes fast.
It really does.
Okay. Last of the three, end of the alphabet, Rob Wu, your turn.
Thank you, Ellen. Yeah, I'm used to going last with the last name like Wu. And so I'm happy to be here tonight. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I do agree with Sid Katz in his assessment that thanks to everyone for putting this on, District 17 Club, Ellie and Stephen, as well as our Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee, Michael and Andrew. Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Wu. I am a candidate for District 3. Right now, I am a Gaithersburg City Council member where I've served since 2015. I'm now in my second term and loving it. A little bit of a history about me. You know, I did not grow up in Montgomery County. I actually grew up in New York, traveled all around the world on active duty with the U.S. Army, lived in Korea for a while, then lived in New Jersey, which Korea is better than New Jersey. Came to Maryland in 2007, first in Frederick, and then working down in the Pentagon. My wife ultimately decided that I was going to, we were no longer going to move, and the community that we found, the community that we love, the community that we are raising our children is right here in Montgomery County. As I mentioned, I've been serving on the Gaithersburg City Council since 2015. I came on through my HOA in my community and loved working on issues for residents. And so I appreciate what Takia was saying with respect to reaching out to residents, making sure they're heard and making sure they're
30 seconds.
Because that's really been what I've been all about, both on my HOA and since I've been on the Gaithersburg City Council. I'm not going to go into the issues right now because I think we're going to have a lot of questions tonight and really get to be able to get delving deep into the issues. So again, thank you for having this forum tonight. Look forward to the questions and conversation.
Thank you, Rob. I'm going to just take a quick minute to introduce some folks who I realize are now in the program. I didn't know that before. State's Attorney John McCarthy is with us. Joe Fogel is a candidate for District 17 delegate, and Jennifer Hosey for Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee. So with that, from now on, if you're a candidate who signs on, you can just announce yourself in the chat. I'm going to turn the program over to Andrew Soundry, who will be asking the questions of our candidates. The first candidate up to answer the question will be Sydney Katz, followed by Rob, and then Takia.
Great. Thank you so much, Ellie, and thank you to all the candidates, of course, for your opening statements. I feel like I've already learned something about each of you. So I'm going to go through the questions as they were submitted. I'll say some of these questions are a little bit duplicative, and so I've worked with Ellie and we've sort of combined them so that we'll have a little bit of focus here, because a lot of people are curious about the same issues. So the most prominent question that was asked by a number of people was simply about your priorities and what in your first period of time as a member of the county council you will do to address your number one and number two priorities. So we could just say what your two priorities are and what you'll move on, how you'll move on them in your first, say, 100 days. We'll start with Sydney Katz.
Well, thank you. On my priorities, I've already started to move on them as someone running for re-election. It's always difficult to choose just a couple because there are so many issues and so many needs, but I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee in Montgomery County for the Montgomery County Council. And certainly public safety is one of my great priorities. I also serve on the Government Operations Committee as well. But for the Public Safety Committee, this country, and you know, we have gotten so that we're every day is a new tragedy that happens. I mean, the horrific event that happened in Texas during the same time we had a young person murdered in Virginia. We've talked about for quite some time that this is a national concern for the public safety itself, and it is. But we have to solve it on a local level, and we can't solve it in a national level. Someone else is going to have to do that. But we need to solve it for the local level. This last time, this budget that hopefully we will pass tomorrow, all of the public safety as well as the employees of Montgomery County, their collective bargained agreements will be 100% completed, done the way that they would like them done. And then my other priority, I'm going to run out of time, is education. As a product of Montgomery County Public Schools, my wife worked for Montgomery County Public Schools for 40 years. I have a daughter that works for the school system in today. But the education is really the idea that we need to have and needs to be as fully funded as we can possibly do it. This budget, we were able to do that. So those are my priorities. And as I say, I've already started to work on them. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Katz. Next up, Rob Wu.
Yes, Andrew, I must say your expectation of government is great with your asking for the first 100 days. You know, as a council member, you focus on every issue that comes before you. And, you know, outside of, I think, the 100 days, because there's going to be a ramp up period, what I want to focus on my term on the council, if I'm elected, is kind of what I've been focusing on here in Gaithersburg. And it boils down to leveraging my experience, kind of the other Rob, not the council member Rob, working for the federal government, where I work in the areas of procurement and innovation. I've been working with certain members of the county council and trying to move forward on innovative economic development here, utilizing our partnerships with federal labs and companies that are growing here in Gaithersburg, or growing in Montgomery County. So I want to call on that experience and try to move initiatives forward, kind of to jumpstart some of the areas that we're kind of, I think, losing to Northern Virginia. You know, we're great in biotech, but we're not necessarily as great in other areas. Like Sydney, one of the things that I've been working on in Gaithersburg is education, and specifically working with community partners to bring innovative programs to our schools, one of which is a two-way immersion program, Brown Station Elementary School. Another thing I've been focusing on is kind of how do we work in a 360-degree holistic manner with our schools to support education in those schools. And I've been focusing on STEM education.
30
Gaithersburg a good job in supporting the needs of our schools, but I wanted to focus on STEM education. So those are the two areas that I want to try to advance as kind of, I don't want to call it a pet project, but working with others on the county council on their priorities, and then having them help work on my priorities as well.
Excellent, thank you so much. And certainly 100 days is optimistic, but we try to keep a positive outlook here in the great cities of Gaithersburg and Rockville. So Takia Bennett.
Yes, so in my campaign, I say Takia J. Bennett knows KNOWS, what Montgomery County needs, and those first two letters, knowledge and nutrition. It is important to make sure that people know what's going on in the county, because if you don't know what's going on in the county, you don't know what's going on. If you're not paying attention to what's going on, your mental health, if you're not paying attention to what you eat and what you do, regardless of what's happening in the county, if you get sick and pass away, none of that matters. We need to make sure that the resources that we have in this county are reaching the people who absolutely need it. 2 days before Mother's Day, my nephew committed suicide. He was 15 years old. He didn't know that, how that there are hotlines and things like that that he can call. It's a very 100% important for us to fix the foundation of the county before we pour more resources into it, because the people who are here and the people who need the resources that are already in place, they don't know how to reach out and find it. And as an elected official, I will make sure that my first priorities is that knowledge and nutrition, because if we don't take care of ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, our families will suffer, we will suffer, the community will suffer, and we will suffer as a whole. So all these big ideas everybody have to make Montgomery County better, bigger, more efficient, more energy efficient, and bring more jobs, none of that's going to matter if we're burying our family members way too early. So knowledge and nutrition would be the first top things that I focus on if elected.
Well, thank you so much for that response. And I think I speak on behalf of all of us when I say I'm so sorry for your loss there. That's profoundly tragic. So I'm going to move on now to the next question. We're going to keep rotating through the order. So this one's going to start with Rob, and then it's going to go Takia, and then Sydney. So this question comes from Matt. And it is, what do you think the County Council should do to assist low-income residents to gain access to lower energy costs via green energy like solar panels and better insulation? Rob, this question starts with you.
Sure, thanks you, Andrew. And Takia, I express my condolences as well. And thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so there's a lot of things, kind of actually dovetailing on kind of what Takia was just talking about. There's a lot of things that the county can do and government can do as a whole with respect to supporting kind of that safety net that supports those residents that are in need. And so I guess the question is specifically focused on energy independence. And so, we do have a lot of control and partnerships with respect to PEPCO and having the kind of programs in place through them to help those that are in need. But there are also ways that the county itself can forward initiatives that will support in that regard. Specifically with respect to green energy, I think that the climate action plan, the Green Bank, and ways to think about how we can obtain energy independence are very important. So they're talking about, for example, solar co-ops. There's been conversations about solar energy in areas of the county that it can be utilized at a larger scale. Those I think are all very important. I think what is also important is making sure that the policies that are adopted do have an emphasis on making sure that everyone benefits from them. And I think the county council has rolled out some of that with respect to their equity initiatives and equity emphasis. And so, you know, I don't know if I have the answer to everything with respect to energy policy, but I think the county's moving in the right direction. And, you know, I think I've got a good handle on environmental issues, and I think it would be important, particularly with respect to green energy, to have that focus and to have the focus on equity again.
Thank you so much, Rob. Next up, Takia.
Yes, I want to piggyback on what Rob said, because PEPCO has came to a lot of homes and talked about the energy efficient light bulbs and the different thermostats and things that we can do to be energy efficient. I think that was amazing. I think that we need more programs like that where people can come in and actually speak to people in their homes, or have a place where we can all meet up so that people are educated on what the energy panels are, how they work, how is it better for the community, how it works for your family, what the outcome would be. I feel like the education part of the green energy and how it works and what to do is what's missing when it connects to the lower income community, because you also have to understand that sometimes when you're dealing with the low income community, you're dealing with people who may not understand. If you write it in a book or something, they may not understand. They're face-to-face learners. So sometimes you got to meet people where they are for them to fully understand the impact of these things that the county have in place for them to better the environment and be energy efficient, and what that looks like for them and their family, and how it does in the community. So keeping everything together, classes, providing resources, and widening the program with PEPCO to reach more people, or even having it where they can go to the PEPCO building to learn about these things and then take that information home with them to share.
Thank you so much, Takia. And last but not least, Sydney.
Thank you very much for the question. And Takia, we all, our hearts go out to you for your loss. It's a horrible situation, and we are very, very sorry, obviously. But thank you for the question. You know, we've already started to work on this. I think Rob touched on this a little bit, but this budget that we will be passing tomorrow, I mean, we've had straw votes on it, but this budget that we'll be passing tomorrow, Andrew Friedson, along with Tom Hucker and others, successfully included $18.6 million for the Montgomery County Green Bank to help businesses and residents retrofit their buildings so that they could be more efficient. It represents the single largest climate investment in Montgomery County history. So we're heading in the right direction. We've leveraged with private sector dollars, hopefully to generate around $100 million in investments every year moving forward. So I think that's a very, very good, maybe more than just a first step for what we're doing. We also need to make certain that the education side of this is there. And Takia certainly touched on that people need to realize what programs are there, why the programs are there, and how they are going to be affected by it.
30 seconds.
The other thing is that over the years in Gaithersburg, when I was mayor there, we had LEED buildings, Leadership of Energy and Efficiency Design buildings. We were the first, I believe, in the state of Maryland to have that type of concept, and we had great success, and we had economic development associated with it as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that response. We want to stay in the vein of climate change for a moment. We had a number of people ask about transportation policy with relation to climate change, and specifically mass transit options. And so I wanted to ask each of you about what do you see as a realistic advance for the next term in mass transit in the county? And this one we will start with Takia.
Sorry. I think it's very important, and I've always been the one that rode the Metro bus and would point out things that could be better growing up as a child. I think it's very important to make sure that our public transportation is safe and available, and that includes the bus stops and things like that for families. Some families don't want to use the Metro, the buses, because the bus stops don't have, all of them don't have shelter. They have young children. They have to, it's close to the street, and it's all of these issues that people face. Now, I know that a lot of people drive, and that most times is not by choice. I would rather not drive, but I don't have access the way I feel safe with our public transportation. I think it's important for us to really like boggle down and focus on our public transportation system and making sure that, like, we have bike lanes and I never see anybody in the bike lanes. Like, we really need to sit down and focus on what we have in front of us, make that efficient, make sure that's working for the members of our community before we move on to, you know, like widening 270 and doing all those extra things, because we have a structure. We just need to put more energy and focus on that structure and what that looks like for us as a whole, as a community, so that people will rely on that and people would use our system and make sure that everything is up to date and make sure that, you know, it's reliable and the community members feel safe using it.
Thank you so much, Sydney Katz.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again for the question. You know, this is an area where there needs to be multimodal solutions. There's not one answer, there's many answers. And Takia's already touched on the buses and bus stops, which are important. And we need to make certain that someone is comfortable when they're riding the bus, not only when they're on the bus, but before they get on the bus, so that they're out of the elements. We need to make certain that they run on time. There needs to be people that can depend on the time schedule of it. I'm someone that, and of course we can talk about bus rapid transit and all of those other areas. I'm someone who's actually been intrigued by monorail. When I first heard of it, I thought, you know, it's going to be sort of a Disney-like type of idea. And they came into our office and they gave us an explanation on it. And I walked away figuring, you know what, this thing could work. And it's, for those who haven't followed it, you probably should Google it after this call. You don't need to Google it while I'm speaking, but you should Google it after this forum, because it is something that could happen fairly rapidly. It's a public-private partnership. The people, the private side, have said that it would cost no more than what it costs to ride a Metro today. It would start in Frederick. Did you just tell me I'm out of time?
30 seconds.
30 seconds, thanks. That it would start in Frederick and it would come down 270 as it's been proposed. It would sit on piers. It wouldn't take any lanes away from 270. And it would be something that could, it's my understanding, is actually snapped together. It's brought here and can be up and running very, very quickly. So it's something that we should absolutely look into. And I believe that it could be the future for Montgomery County. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Rob Wu.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. And this is a fundamental question, I think, to the direction of Montgomery County in the future. You know, Rockville and Gaithersburg in District 3 are primarily situated on and around high capacity transit nodes. And so, you know, there's two parts to this question as to, you know, how to make ourselves more environmentally efficient. Well, you do so by building high capacity transit, like Sid had mentioned, 355 BRT. And then you build housing around transit. So I'm a very big proponent of making sure that where it's appropriate in the county, you know, we reconcile it and we allow for the development around these high capacity transit nodes so people can get around without the cars, as Takia had mentioned. The issue is that Montgomery County historically, and since I've been on the Gaithersburg Council, has been not very good at funding large scale transit infrastructure. We received a briefing on 355 BRT, or the reimagined 355 BRT and the reimagined CCT recently. You know, those projects have been spinning wheels since I got on the council in 2015. it looks like we're finally getting traction on 355 BRT. And I thank the council for what it looks to be a funding vote for that. And so for District 3 in particular, 355 BRT in my mind, as well as Veers Mill Flash, are absolutely essential to activating the 355 corridor. They're absolutely essential to not only providing transit for folks that want to ride buses and not ride cars, but it's integral for the ultimate development in those areas. And so once you get high capacity transit nodes where people don't need cars, then you don't need car garages. So you can build, condominiums, you can build housing that the future of Montgomery wants to live in, where they can walk downstairs, take a bus to a job, grab a beer on the corner lot, things like that, that I think is the future of Montgomery County, at least in District 3.
Thank you so much, Rob. Continuing in the same concept of transportation, we had a number of questions about each of your positions on the governor's proposal to widen I-270 with toll lanes. So we know that in some sense the project has been approved by some groups, but we're not entirely sure whether there are still avenues to object to it, and if so, would you intend to do that, or would you intend to support the project? And so we're going to start with Sydney.
Here again, thank you for the question. I am vehemently opposed to the widening beyond the walls of I-270. I've been opposed to it since the very beginning. The governor was at the parade in Gaithersburg, the Labor Day parade, where he made the declaration that they would not widen 270 beyond the existing walls, beyond the pattern that it is today. And then he very quickly changed it and said they were going to try not to. It is an absolute mistake. We should go and do reversible lanes. We should have my monorail that I just was talking about a few moments ago. That would be a way to have a multimodal approach to air transportation issues. The only group, in my opinion, that would want to have the congestion remain on 270 is the group that's getting paid to have somebody use their lanes. And that is a real problem. It's going to be too expensive for people going to work. If they do it, the public-private partnerships, everything is, it's not going to cost the taxpayer. It is going to cost the taxpayer. And beyond that, they're not including that they'd have to relocate the WSSC water lines. And no, it is not a taxpayer that would be paying that. It's the ratepayer, who, by the way, is the same person as the taxpayer. So it is a mistake. We need to rethink this. There's environmental issues. And I believe, and I've attended many a rally that we have and said the exact same thing that I'm saying now.
30.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Next up, Rob Wu.
Thanks, Andrew. So this issue hits home to me because I actually work in McLean, Virginia, and I took a picture today. Let's see if I can get this on the screen. Probably not. It's of the op lanes that are in Virginia. And I was stuck in traffic because I wasn't willing to pay the toll, and looking over to the left and seeing 0 cars in that lane. Maybe one would trickle by every once in a while. The fact of the matter is that the P3 proposed by the Hogan administration, it's not a capacity issue. It's not a traffic relief issue. It's a funding mechanism. And so you're putting 80% of the traffic onto less lanes, and you're allowing 20% of the traffic onto these private toll lanes that are, because they're willing to pay for it. It does not provide a traffic congestion relief solution for the large majority of the people that will be using the roads. It is quite simply a funding mechanism, and I think it's a wrong way of doing things. And so, hearkening onto my procurement experience on that other job that I do, I deal with contracts a lot, and there are significant risks with P3s. The administration has not been transparent in what we are ultimately signing on for, and potentially an $11 billion 50-year agreement, let alone, as Cindy had mentioned, the impacts that it would have in Rockville and Gaithersburg with respect to moving outside of the rights of way, forcing residents onto those expensive lanes if they want to access in certain areas of Rockville. It just doesn't make sense. Now, I think we do need to think of strategies to work on improving Legion Bridge. Again, I drive across it quite frequently. Traffic is a real issue. We do have to think about ways to improve 270. And so the reversible lanes that Sid mentioned, those are used on 395 in Virginia. I think they work better. They're utilized. It's not the masses are in traffic while those that can afford it are able to drive at speed and pay for it. It just is not the right solution. We can do better.
Thank you so much. And Takia?
I agree 100% with Sydney and Rob. They said everything that I would say, but I'm going to add that we need to look at why 270 is always backed up, jammed up, what's going on. You know how many times I ride down 270 and it's a little fender bender and they're sitting in the middle of the street? Why are you sitting in the middle of the street? Why don't you know that you're supposed to pull over on the side? We go and we take our driver's license one time and we never have to do it again. Some people may need a refresher course as to what to do just in case they do get in an accident, or how to, if you're not feeling good, move over on the side, what it means to put something white in your window, or, those type of things matter as well. So sometimes, the cell phone, people being on their cell phone is a big issue. So we need to look at other things as to why there's so many accidents, rather than let's just widen 270 and then that's going to fix the problems, because it's not. So no to widening 270, please no. Yes to finding other things that we can do to, number one, stop the accidents and having people sitting in the middle of the road. I don't know if we can do anything about rubbernecking and people looking and causing more traffic, but that's a whole different topic. But we need to make sure that we are doing our part to make sure we are trying to fix the problem before we create a bigger one by widening 270.
Thank you so much. And if the hosts will allow me, I'd like to do a quick 1-minute follow-up on that, because each of you said that you were opposed to the project, and it is my understanding that the contract was approved by the Board of Public Works. So what can you do realistically as a council member to put the brakes on this project? And we'll start with, forget where I left off here, the order. We'll start with Takia.
Well, I think, busting in the room and saying, no, stop, may not work. I think if we, really realistically come up with a proposal that says, hey, these are the things that are going to affect negative in our community. These are the people that will be affected. This is how we will be affected. And this is what we don't need in the community. I feel like it's important for any objection to be recognized and to be considered. Because as of right now, there's no construction. So I feel like there's room for an objection to come in. So I feel like our voices, we need to put it together and our voices need to be heard, and we need to say it loud and say it proud.
Thank you so much. And Sydney?
I'm not even certain where the law, where the legal ramifications are at this point. I believe that there's been a group that has protested the actual public-private partner, the private side of this, and I believe that there's still a possibility that would be that there would be additional legal ramifications there.
30 seconds.
I'm not certain where the environmental issues are, but I do believe that the next governor could easily be the person and their administration to actually work on this. So I think it's very important that we all let the next governor realize how important this issue is to a very important constituency in Montgomery County.
Thank you so much. And Rob Wu.
Certainly. Yeah, so the status of it right now is there was a protest. The judge in February decided that the administration had not done it correctly and sent it back for a decision. That decision was issued earlier this month. And so we're in the appeal period. And so it really is a clock matter right now with respect to the initial contract. And so, if there is an appeal and, in a multi-billion-dollar context where you have two companies fighting against each other, You could expect that to come. That, I think, is the best case scenario for ultimately getting a decision that will be made by the next administration, as opposed to this administration. Again, we don't know the terms of the ultimate contract. It's currently in a preliminary design phase and preliminary construction. They've been mentioned of 50-year terms. I don't know what the exit provisions are, or what the next governor or next House of Delegates or a General Assembly would be able to do once the contract is signed. It really does put us in a pickle, the decision that Governor Hogan and Controller Francho made with respect to this.
Great. Thank you all so much for indulging me with that. We're going to go back to the 2 minutes now for the rest of the questions. We had a number of questions about housing, particularly affordable housing. So I'm just going to read sort of an amalgamation that we have here. Affordable housing is a big issue with rising rents and prices of homes. What can the council do to, one, make housing more affordable to middle and lower income residents, and two, help ensure that people with very low incomes, for instance, those on SSI who can afford, maybe $300 a month or $400 a month, can find access to affordable housing. And this time we're going to start with Rob.
Thanks, Andrew. Affordable housing is something that is near and dear to me, and something that I have advocated for in Gaithersburg. We had a publicized debate surrounding Lake Forest Mall, where myself and my colleague Mike Sesma were fighting a sentiment to limit affordable housing in that area, and ultimately we were able to succeed and raise the caps there. It is something that takes an all-in approach with respect to increasing the housing supply. For example, we currently have a supply and demand issue. So when I sit on the Metropolitan Washington Council of Government, I'm a board member there, and we took a vote in 2019 to increase housing supply throughout the entire region. Gaithersburg has been pulling its own weight there with respect to new housing starts. So addressing that supply issue. Building housing types that are diverse, that are not necessarily single family houses or $1 million condos. That's something we adopted with respect to Lake Forest Mall. So making sure that different housing stock comes in at different price points is also very important. Making sure, as I mentioned before, that housing is coming in next to mass transit, so folks don't need cars to be able to live, work, and play where they are. And then ultimately, as you mentioned, on the market rate, obtainable housing is what we call when you add supply. Affordable houses, as far as a regulatory matter or a supported matter, are also important as well. So, I support in Gaithersburg, for example, the 15% affordable housing and workforce.
30 seconds.
It's very important to take a look at where we can increase those at the county level, such as where you add bonuses for housing density. There's also part of that all-in approach that the county has been looking at direct funding of affordable housing on public land. And I think that's very important. We really need to think about making sure that affordable housing come in. There's a strategy with respect to it. There's funding with respect to it, and that it is done throughout the county, not just in the areas where the lower income people reside. We need to make sure that it is everywhere, so that those that want access to housing throughout the county can afford it.
Thank you so much. And Takia?
Thank you. Yes, I agree with Rob. I also wanted to add, so we have programs like HOC and MPDUs and things like that. And the one thing that I wanted to add on top of what Rob was saying is that there's people that are on HOC and they get rental assistance, and they have to recertify, which means they have to bring bank statements and all of their documents. But what doesn't happen is those documents that they turn in, they don't get okay, this is like, there's no budgeting, there's no anything. You just turn it in to make sure you still qualify for your income, and then you just stay in that HOC unit. So if you want to move to an MPDU, which it should be a phase, one person shouldn't be able to stay in the HOC house for 40 years. And then once their kids grow up, now they just have to move. It should be a phase where, okay, now you need help, submit your paperwork, we'll go through your budget. This is where you can sit and get these people ready to be able to move. So there's a lot of people who just need assistance with budgeting. Even if they are on Social Security, they have low income, they work 1 job or 3 jobs. If they don't know how to budget and they don't know, how to manage their money, they're not educated in that area, then they're going to suffer regardless of what housing they're going to. So when we have these programs that are already in place, who we have to submit paperwork to anyway, if we could make it a phase where people are getting helped to be able to go from low income and needing help to phase through to being a homeowner, even if it is an MPDU or one of the other housing available in the county.
Thank you so much. And Sydney? You're muted.
Mute me for years, and now all of a sudden it's happening. This fiscal year, tomorrow's budget has made great progress for this area. It certainly addresses housing affordability and preservation. The Housing Production Fund, which is a revolving fund. And this one, we're actually going to be what we're calling doubling down to reach about $100 million goal for that. It will build approximately 6,000 additional affordable units over the next 2 decades. And it's important to say it that way. It doesn't happen overnight. It's, a 20-year time frame, but the only way to start is to start. So we're doing that and preserving and having the affordable housing production. It's also something to keep in mind that we can't build our way out of this. Someone has to have the ability to get capital, to get a mortgage. And that becomes another issue for people. I can tell you, in my experience in Gaithersburg, there was apartment units that were torn down and new ones were built. The apartment units that were torn down and were something that were run down. It was housing that was a concern for people to be living in it. And what happened was, because the people would actually they would get their funds that they were entitled to. They didn't have to pay. They got 3 months rent, et cetera. And I got 30 seconds, so it's going to have to be fast. But what happened was that the fact that they actually had money in their hand, they were able to, in some cases, pay less for their mortgage than they were paying for rent. And so they had the additional money, they had the additional down payment. And because of that, they were people that actually got home ownership because of those situations. We need to do more and more of that. Having home ownership helps someone build their wealth as well.
Thank you so much for your responses on that. We're going to move on now to a new topic. We did have a number of questions on policing and crime in Montgomery County. And so I'm going to go a little bit out of order here, but I think it's important to start, given the tragic shooting that happened last night in Uvalde, Texas. I think it is important that we ask about what you intend to do as a council member to address gun violence here in Montgomery County and to keep particularly our students safe. And we're going to start with, I keep losing my order here. We're going to start with Takia.
Okay, thank you for that. I was actually talking about this topic earlier. There are things that can be set in place right now that can help protect our kids. Not as, mental health and all of this. Yes, those are big topics. But what about people not being able to get into the school unless the administrators know why they're there? What about students having lanyards so that it's easily identified if they're students or teachers? They're always, in the kids nowadays have phones at 5. Why can we not text if there's something, if like the kids, something's going on in the school and they can text an emergency number for that school? Why we don't have panic buttons? Like, there's certain things that that I feel like we can do inside of the schools right now to keep our kids safe. Now, I know there's a lot of things, like my nephew, he went to Gaithersburg High School and he felt unsafe because not only, school shootings, but there's bullies. So what if my nephew felt like he needed to get back at those bullies and then he went and up to the school? He would have been able just to get right in at any point to do anything. So we need to make sure that we are addressing what these issues are from the school level, and that, like at the elementary schools, make sure these kids, people don't have access to them, and at the high schools, make sure these kids have access to mental health people, and that these people are actually reaching out to these students and making sure that these students are good, and us providing the things for these students for them to feel safe, like panic buttons, like codes that they can text if something's about to happen or if they're feeling some kind of way, and for people to be able to respond at the school level before things escalate.
Thank you so much for that. Next up, Sydney.
Thank you. Let me dovetail what Takia was saying. This is a huge, huge problem. I mean, the tragedy that happened yesterday, we've had tragedies, thank goodness, not as mass an event as happened in Texas, but we've had tragedies in Montgomery County. We've had, for the first time in I think ever, and certainly in my memory, we had a shooting inside a school. Done by a ghost gun. There are more ghost guns that have been apprehended or taken in Montgomery County, I think by about 25% from the year prior, which was a huge year as well. The bullying is a huge problem. A couple of weeks ago, Craig Rice and Greg Wims and I had an event in Germantown where the young man, Jaden Jones, who was murdered in a field across from Northwest High School. The police have since caught a murderer. I don't know whether there's additional arrests that will take place. But this is something that needs to be a community come together and addressed. It is not simply a policing problem. It is a community problem. We need parents. We need everyone, the faith-based community. We need everyone to come together to solve this horrific issue. I can also tell you that I believe that, and I know that there are people that don't want school resource officers or community enforcement officers. I also know there are people who want to have what this new MOU between the Montgomery County Public Schools and Montgomery County Police Department has just been signed. They want to see how it will happen and how it takes place, what it will do. And I believe it's got to be something that we all continue to look at, but it is a community problem that we need to come together. We're addressing and we need to be helping our children. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Rob Wu.
Thanks, Andrew. And so we had a conversation in my household that shouldn't have to occur with my children surrounding the events in Texas. And, it is that they understand more so than I thought they would, but it is absolutely tragic. And my daughter said one thing that stuck with me is that she's not concerned because her teachers will protect her. And so that's a kind of an adult kind of thought right there, but it does have a message behind it. And I hear what Sid is saying with respect to finding solutions in the community. And I wholly agree that this needs to be a community-based effort with respect to, the parents, with respect to students, with respect to mental health professionals, with respect to law enforcement, but there needs to be strategies in order to address these, and strategies involve funding. And so all of the things that, for example, Takia was talking about, I know some of which are in place because we have conversations with our schools. This takes deliberate funding, emphasis by the council, emphasis by the BOE with respect to what are the best in class strategies that can be adopted by schools, and let's get them funded. Now, you can't just harden a school. And so, Sydney had mentioned the SRO program. I think it's important to have law enforcement having a role in schools, but it has to be the schools and that community that ultimately make a decision there. But ultimately, that's not going to, I think,
30 seconds.
be enough to prevent a situation like Texas, a situation like Magruder. We really need to think hard about how the council can put programming in place, put funding in place in order to have both the hardened mechanisms that Takia was talking about, working with law enforcement, as Sid was talking about, but also making sure that we bring in the resources to address the holistic problems that are driving the issues, like mental health issues, like that 360-degree community-based support issues I was talking about. And frankly, some of these things you just can't prevent, but you have to try to prevent them. And that's the unfortunate reality that we live in today. And that's why it's important the work that they're doing at the state, particularly level with respect to ghost guns and limiting gun access here in Maryland. But also we need action at the federal level as well, because this can't keep happening.
Thank you so much. I want to sort of build on the conversation that we've had a little bit about gun violence to move into policing. As you may know, George Floyd was killed by a police officer exactly 2 years ago today. And after his death, there were a number of conversations about what needs to be done to re-examine how policing operates and what we can do to sort of reform that process while still addressing crime. And so I'm wondering if you could each tell me a little bit about what you believe the county council can do on top of what it has already done to reform how policing happens while still making sure that we address crime. And we're going to start with Sydney on this one.
Thank you for the question. As Chair of Public Safety for the County Council, we have already started. And first off, the state of Maryland has come a long way in the last 2 years. In fact, I was on a Zoom call this morning with Senator Will Smith, who was discussing the legislation, what they have just done this last session. But the state of Maryland has passed the police advisory boards and the charging committees legislation, and that we are now, Montgomery County went forward and is doing it. In some cases, we haven't gotten all of the information that we needed to get, but we went forward. As of July 1st, the boards need to be in place. The county executive is actively working on sending names over that will be on that board. We haven't seen them yet, but that becomes necessary. But we also need to do just what we did in this last budget that will hopefully be passed tomorrow. We need to pay our first responders to be so that they are well paid, well trained, well managed, and that everyone in the community feels safe and that they are being treated fairly. And that is what our goal has been. We are vividly working on it. We started out trying to do the advisory board
30 seconds.
Legislation through the Public Safety Committee, realized we were going to run out of time. It went directly to the entire council. We met as a council of the whole so that we can meet those timelines. The other thing is, and there are people that don't get enough thanks for what they do. A police officer, of all of our first responders, but a police officer runs to a problem when all of the other people are running from it. They put their life in jeopardy to save people's lives who they don't even know in most cases. And they do, in general, a tremendous job. Not to say that we haven't had some problems, but they do, in general, a tremendous job. And I sincerely believe that we need to make certain, as we do when we see a person in arms in the armed forces say, thank you for your service. We need to start doing that whenever we see a police officer or a first responder. I know I went too long. Thank you for giving me that extra time.
Thank you so much for your response, Rob.
Thanks, Andrew. As a municipal official in Gaithersburg, where we have purview over our own police department, I've been watching what's going on both in the city and the county And frankly, and I mean no disrespect, the county has not done a good job with respect to hiring, retaining, and training law enforcement officers at the county level. You know, Sid had mentioned that in the latest budget, they'd increased pay for law enforcement officers, which I think is great. But before that, the law enforcement, the entry-level law enforcement income was the second lowest in the entire region. I don't know how we got to that point, but it should not have gotten to that point. And so when I'm talking to law enforcement officers out there, I'm hearing about morale issues. I'm hearing, you know, and I understand some of it is coming from the national level and a debate that is kind of working its way into Montgomery County, which is unfortunate. But the fact of the matter is some in the law enforcement community have sharp words to say about what the council has done with respect to the morale in our ranks. You know, we need to adopt strategies that will hire, train, equip, and retain, and ultimately promote law enforcement officers that support our values. And that takes funding, that takes resources. We should not be cutting law enforcement officers' positions out of our budget as the county did a little while ago. And it shouldn't have taken until now in order to raise the salaries. You know, I've been watching it. I've made sure that Gaithersburg salaries are above what the county pays. We don't have as many issues in that regard. You know, reform, I think, is an important thing as well. You know, I think, you know, Alexandria has adopted a model, for example, with public health, mental health workers working with police officers that has been very successful. When you shift the mental health issues and not away from the public safety issues, you free up law enforcement officers to be able to do their essential job for our community, which is fighting crime. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Takia.
Okay, I continue to speak about my nephew because this plays in. My nephew lived next door to me, so when he passed away, all the officers and my sister and everybody was in my house. There were exactly 19 officers in my house, and not one of them was a person of color. My daughter noticed that first. Now, my view of officers was never tainted until I became an adult. When growing up here in Montgomery County, the first time I went camping was with the Montgomery County officer. The first time I went fishing was with the Montgomery County officer. It's because of those experiences I wanted to become a Montgomery County officer myself. So I think we need to look back at how our officers can be inside of the community and how our officers can interact with our children to make sure that what they're seeing on TV and how officers are treating people that they see on TV is not everybody's reality. Because I never experienced that. Those were my daughter's first questions. They're 12, 9, and 8. So of course they understand what's going on, but they want to know, like, why would you want to be an officer if they do that? That's not everybody. So we need to change. We need to get those programs back into place, because if we don't change these children's views on what officers are and their role that they play in the community, because they're not just out here to shoot bad guys or get bad guys. They are out here for the community. And we need to make sure that our children understand that, and that our children understand that our officers are here to protect everybody. They're not here to shoot people, and they're not here just to put people in jail. So they need to be able to determine the difference, and we need to get them programs back into our schools so that we can have officers for the future and our children can have a clear view of what that means.
Thank you so much for your response. I do want to follow up on that point a little bit. We had a good question submitted by Jamil about what can be done to recruit and retain officers, particularly officers who are representative of the communities that they are serving and live in the communities that they are serving here in Montgomery County. And we're going to start with Rob.
Thanks, Andrew. And that's a great question. And it's something that we've been focusing on in Gaithersburg. You know, when George Floyd occurred, we actually lost one of our great officers, one of our lieutenants, whose family simply said they didn't want him doing this. There's a climate out there that is driving good law enforcement officers of color, good law enforcement officers who are women, away from wanting to do a job that I think is one of the noblest professions. And so at a basic level, changing the narrative, I think is very important. You know, again, I mentioned that national narrative, but there's also a local narrative. We have to support our law enforcement officers, make them feel like this is that honorable job that you see in the movies. That, you know, law enforcement is one of those professions that we all need and that folks should want to be involved in. It's not something that everyone can do. You know, I'm an Army officer. I'm trained in using guns. But I don't think I could be a police officer simply because of what they have to do each and every day. And so we have to recognize that. We have to recruit in that mind that we want to, you know, bring law enforcement officers on that represent our community, recruiting from the community. Frankly, we have to be able to pay them. You know, law enforcement officers don't have to choose one of the hardest professions. They could go make a lot more money in other occupations. And they do this for a different reason. And so we have to make them feel supported. We have to make sure that we are bringing on folks that work in the community. We have to make sure our law enforcement officers that come on can live in the community. And so I'd mentioned workforce housing, for example. One of the things we do in Gaithersburg is we provide a housing stipend for employees under a certain economic level that allows them to live in the community. Personally, I think when I drive through the communities and I see a police vehicle that's been taken home parking outside of their house, it makes me feel safer because I know there is an officer that works for us that is living in our community. So it really is a narrative approach. It is a funding approach. It is making law enforcement officers want to work in the county for the long term.
Thank you so much. And Takia?
Thank you for the question. So I honestly believe that if we expand programs like the patrols, like my daughter was a patrol, she's always wanted to be helpful and all those type of things. But then when she gets to middle school, she's like, ooh, what can I sign up for? And then there's nothing there. We need to make sure that we take those type of programs for those students who do want to help out, who do care. And then there are a set of students who are the protectors of their families, the protectors of their siblings, and they do want to go that avenue, but don't know how. So if we would expand programs from the patrols and then go into middle school, and then by the time they get into high school, they're already, you know, getting the information about the police academy. They're already getting the information about what it's about and what it does. I think we need to incorporate those things in the middle school and the high school level, because when I decided that I wanted to be an officer, I was 9 years old. And I want to make sure that those kids have those resources in front of them. Yes, it's a debate about the resource officers, them being in schools and things like that. But how about send the officer into the school and let the kids ask them questions about their everyday life and what they have to do? Let's get those type of things back inside of schools so that we can get the interest of the kids back in wanting to be an officer, so that they can have a clear understanding again of what an officer is. And it's not just what they see on TV or what they're scrolling through their phone. It's real, actual in your community. This is what officers do, and this is what I want to be a part of.
Okay.
So we have to start there at home and make sure that we are providing these things to our students.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Sydney?
Yeah, thank you. I think Takia hit many nails on top of the head with exactly what she just said. You know, Vice President of the Council for this year, Evan Glass, came up with that we need to enhance our cadet program. And that's exactly what Takia was, and Rob too, was talking about, that we need to start our students at an earlier age so that they are comfortable with police officers. Part of the issue that we are going through is that some, especially young people, older people too, for that matter, are seeing a police officer at the worst time of their life. Someone has called the police come, there's a situation where in some cases, the police have to remove someone from that home situation, and that child sees their parent or grandparent or whoever being taken away, and they blame the police for what has taken place. We need to make certain that that same young person sees a police officer at a time when they're friends with each other. In Gaithersburg, years back, we had winning Wednesdays when a police officer would go and, I don't know, play basketball at recess with somebody, or whatever it was, Tuesdays, and they would go and have lunch and an elementary school. We had all of those types of
30
programs
seconds.
so that the young people especially would see a police officer at a better time. We also need to make certain that they have their resources. We need to make certain that they work with their mental health providers. We ask our police to do way too much. And at times they need to have many skills, but they don't have all of the skills that is necessary when someone calls the 911. They need someone to get there immediately, and we need to make certain that that they have the resources to get there so that the situation can be handled the way it needs to be handled.
Thank you so much. We're going to move into our final question because I'm conscious that we are getting close to the end of our time tonight. And so this was a wonderful question that was submitted by Barry. And this question is, what is the greatest attribute of your two opponents in this race? And so we're gonna go through. We're gonna start with Takia.
So I'm gonna start with Mr. Sidney. So when I first decided to run, even in the last election, I've always admired his passion behind every single thing that he did. I tell my kids about him all the time, and I look at him as a really, really, really good leader for Montgomery County, and someone that I would absolutely recommend for my children to look up to, and somebody that I want my children to model. Mr. Wu, I appreciate the dedication to the county. Not being from here and coming to Montgomery County and saying this is where I want to be home, and then want to make changes to help people in the county. To me, it's like, yes, we need somebody that's going to come and make sure that they care about the people in the community and not just take a job because it's a job. So those type of things are very important to me, and I appreciate the both of you for being those type of people and being those type of leaders in the county, so that people like myself who have had no clue into politics, not knowing what's going on, just out here yelling and shining for my community, but also have leaders that are in place that my children can look up to and hopefully reach out to and hopefully partner with in their future, because they're going to be junior leaders too. So I just appreciate that in the both of you for Montgomery County.
Thank you so much, Takia. And Sydney?
You know, of all the questions I've ever been asked, that's probably one of the most fun questions that anyone could ask. And I thank
Barry
you for asking that. You know, I think I could say for both their interest in the community and the passion that they're showing for their community. Nothing gets done by itself. I made this statement yesterday. I spoke to a group and said, you know, when somebody says somebody needs to do something, both of these people are people that are saying, I'm that somebody. I should be allowed to do something. Now, there again, I congratulate them for their dedication. In Rob's case, I certainly congratulate him on his service in the military and beyond. I guess you're still in the reserves. I guess I'm right on that. And also, I thank them for being community leaders to make certain that their families and are safe, and we all need to work together to do that. So for that, I congratulate both of them, and am proud to be able to say that. And I thank you for the question.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Rob?
Yeah, Andrew, that's a great question to ask, and put me on the spot like this. But one thing that I have absolutely enjoyed about running for county council is the fact that I'm in a race with two people that are dedicated, that are not sharp elbowed. You know, we get to talk about issues on the campaign trail because we're not attacking each other. And, you know, I think that, I think we all live in Gaithersburg. So I'm going to say it is the Gaithersburg way. It's kind of the model we've grown up in our municipal system here is that we can disagree on issues, but we don't have to be disagreeable. You know, with Takia in particular, I sense, and your passion comes across as a community activist. And that's kind of the same vein that I've come up through. As I mentioned, I was working for my HOA and on the city council. The things that I like to do best are working for residents. When I get that message coming into me saying my light is out, or there's a pothole on the street, or something is happening, the best thing in my day is trying to resolve that issue. And so I can sense you have that same passion. Sid has always been great to me. And I throw that out there with extreme honesty since I first met him. I think it was in 2015, in the 2015 race. He's been there to talk to me. He's been there to mentor me. Even during this race, we have had conversations and they have not been negative conversations. And so, I appreciate that kind of candor. I appreciate that kind of camaraderie type of attitude that I think is missing in a lot of places, but is, I think, alive and well here in Montgomery County and specifically here in District 3.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for your responses to that question and for your participation tonight. I'm going to throw it back to Ellie to lead us into closing statements. It's been a privilege to ask questions of all of you tonight, so thank you so much.
Yeah, this was really, I don't want to say heartwarming, but it just shows politics doesn't have to be ugly. So now we're going to do closing statements, and I guess we're in the same order as we started out. Takia, I believe you're the first one up with your closing statements to our audience.
Yes, I just want to absolutely say thank you so much for the opportunity to share tonight. I just want to say that I am dedicated to making sure that the foundation of our community is secure so that everything that goes forward and everything that we put in our community to make it bigger and better and more energy efficient and all of those beautiful things, I just want to make sure that we're able to move forward. And I want to make sure that the people who are low income, the people who have low education or whatever the case may be, make sure that their voices are heard and that we're not leaving anybody behind. We are only as strong as our weakest link, and sometimes we have to put a focus on one of those links to make sure that we are as strong as we can be. I am here in my community and I'm raising my family here in this community, and I plan on being here in this community for the long haul. And I want to thank everybody here and everybody online and everybody in the community who follow me, ask me questions, and ask me to come places, because I really just want you to know that you don't have to sit in silence. You have a place in politics. And even if you don't have money, your voice does not cost a dime. You can speak out, you can stand up. And if you need any help, my name is Takia J. Bennett, and I am here to help you, stand up with you, and move through the community and partner with everybody to make sure that we can get things done and we can set the foundation for our future, for ourselves, and definitely for our children and our families. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
My bad. Okay. Thank you, Takia. That was lovely. And Sydney?
Thank you. And thank you to both Takia and Rob for the kind words they said about me as well. I appreciate that. And for the question that was asked. I'm someone who's bringing experience to this race. The next county council will have 11 members, not 9, but 11. And at least 5 will be new council members. I know that Rob and Takia hope that there would be at least 6 who would be new council members, but and I don't. I hope that there's at least 5. I hope that I am returned to the county council. But I'm bringing an experience that this next county council is truly going to need. Before I came to the county, I was on the city council of Gaithersburg. I was the mayor of Gaithersburg. I was the president of the Montgomery County chapter for the Maryland Municipal League at least 4, maybe 5 times. I was the state president of the Maryland Municipal League. This district, the 3rd district, the new 3rd district, is about 85 to 90% municipal boundaries, Gaithersburg and Rockville and Washington Grove. And so I'm someone that knows how to work with the municipalities. Once I came to the county, I was elected by my peers to be the vice president of the council, up to the president of the council. I was the president of the council. I had that distinction when the pandemic broke out. And, you know, as much, and we were, as we've said before, we were building the plane as we were flying it. We didn't know what to do, but my colleagues and I all came together. And that's part of why I say I'm a consensus builder and a problem solver. I believe the next county council is going to need someone with those attributes. And I sincerely hope that you will please consider voting for me. If you have additional information, want additional information, please go to www.sydneykatz.com. And I look forward to continue to work with each and every one of you on a variety of issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sydney. Rob, you'll be the last.
Thanks, Ellie, and thank you very much for putting this on. This has been a great forum. Thanks to Michael and to Andrew and to Stephen as well. You know, I'll start off by saying I ask for your vote, and I'll tell you why I think that I deserve your vote and why I would serve best on the county council among a very esteemed group. And you know, I think that the work that I've been focusing on in the city of Gaithersburg prepares me for ultimately what needs to happen at the county level. So a focus on, you know, making sure that what comes into District 3 and what happens in the county is pointing us towards the future with respect to mixed use developments which Gaithersburg is known for. Actually coming up with strategies to fund and implement transit strategies, particularly within District 3 and on 355 BRT and Veers Mill BRT, you know, making sure those projects come to fruition. I'll also have a focus on something that's been near and dear to me that I've been working on with respect to building out bicycle infrastructure. You know, Rockville's got great infrastructure, Gaithersburg not so much. Between the two jurisdictions, not much at all. And so I want to bring that kind of focus to the county level to kind of work with the jurisdictions that I've learned to work with since I've been on the Gaithersburg Council to get things done. I want to focus on economic development within District 3 in particular, as well as the county, you know, building out the Great Seneca Science Corridor, which is kind of which has been languishing due to land use decisions that I think were unfortunate. I think we need to move forward. You know, I purposely chose the motto for my campaign as moving forward together, because I think we need to move in a direction that embraces higher capacity developments, transit infrastructure, environmentalism. I'm endorsed by the Sierra Club. I'm an avid tree hugger. I have a degree in environmental studies. I think we need to start thinking about the environmental economy going forward and taking it much more seriously in the land use decisions and the funding decisions that we are making. You know, I think that ultimately, you know, Sid is the incumbent. Sid has been there for 8 years. He brings a wealth of experience, but I think I can match that experience. And I think I can match the enthusiasm as well with respect to engaging the residents, which I love here in Gaithersburg, as I mentioned before, you know, truly listening to all segments of the population to try to solve their problems, try to solve the issues that they bring forward, trying to advocate for access to minority and underserved populations, as we've been doing in Gaithersburg, to make sure, as Takia had mentioned, everybody has access to our democracy, everybody has access to our programs, everyone has access to the county. Because if we can't move everybody forward, you know, and we're leaving folks behind, that's not the county that I see and I want to live in the future. So I thank you all for tonight. I thank you for the debate. I thank you for the discussion on the issues. Come July 19th, I hope you'll consider voting for me. Go to www.voterobwu.com to learn more about my campaign, and I will be knocking your door soon.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Just a few last sentences. If you didn't hear your question asked, we did run out of time for all of them. I would recommend contacting the candidates directly with those questions. Thanks to Michael, Andrew, Steve, Fisher for everything you did to make this run smoothly. Thanks to the audience and to our candidates. It has been very informative, and I really feel like we've gotten to know each one of you much better than we did before this evening. And with that, Michael, everyone unmute themselves and we'll say goodnight and,
Sure, inviting everyone to unmute and say goodnight.
yeah.
Good
Good
night.
Good
night.
night and
Thank you,
thank
everybody.
you.
Have a good
Good
night.
night.
This was
Good
really
night,
fun.
everybody.
Have a good
Bye.
wonderful debate, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.
Great
Good night.
debate.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Buenas noches.
Good night.
Fantastic debate, everyone.
Noches.
Good
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
night.